The ocean has a rule that sounds simple. If you reach the top, nothing can touch you. No predators, no threats, no challengers. But that rule has a loophole, because being the apex predator doesn't mean you're untouchable. It only means nothing is supposed to hunt you. And millions of years ago, the ocean created something that didn't just challenge the top predator. It was designed to erase it. Not with speed, not with numbers, but with a weapon so brutal that even the strongest creature in the sea had to think twice before getting close. And here's the terrifying part. This wasn't a shark, and it wasn't a normal whale either. It was a mammal that hunted like a monster in an era where the ocean was rich enough to support the absolute limits of violence. If you could time travel back into that water, you wouldn't see a peaceful nature documentary. You'd be looking at a war zone, a place where the strongest hunters didn't always fight each other, because the cost of winning was often the same as losing. To understand why this creature was so unnatural, you have to go back around 12 million years. The planet was warmer, the oceans were packed with life, and that abundance created something extremely rare in nature. Not one, but two super predators existing at the same time. Usually, ecosystems don't allow that, because if two hunters are equally dominant, one eventually collapses, migrates, or gets eliminated. But for a window of time, the ocean had enough food to keep two nightmares alive, and that single fact is the reason this story even exists. One of these predators was exactly what most people imagine when they think of an unstoppable prehistoric killer. Huge body, built like a living wall of muscle, teeth designed for one purpose, to crush and cut through large prey like it didn't matter. A bite so powerful it could end fights instantly. No hesitation, no mercy. And for a long time, nothing in the ocean could compete with it, until something appeared beside it. Not above it, beside it. A predator that didn't win by being bigger. It won by being wrong. Because the second apex predator wasn't a reptile. It wasn't a dinosaur. It wasn't some fantasy creature. It was a mammal, warm-blooded, intelligent compared to most ocean hunters, built for endurance, built for aggression. And worst of all to us, it wasn't a deep-sea squid eater like its modern relatives. It didn't specialize in slippery prey. It specialized in something far worse. It hunted whales. That alone should tell you how unnatural it was, because most whales don't evolve into killers of other whales. Most whales become filter feeders, reinforced giants that eat tiny animals, or deep divers that rely on stealth and suction. Their mouths aren't built for fighting. Their teeth often become useless, reduced, or disappear completely. So when you see a whale-shaped animal with a skull built like a battering ram and teeth designed specifically to rip through large bodies, you're not looking at a normal branch of evolution. You're looking at something that evolution tried for a moment and then erased. And the reason scientists know it wasn't normal is simple. The mouth gives everything away. In nature, you can predict an animal's entire lifestyle just by looking at its jaws. It's like reading a blueprint. If you have narrow teeth and weak jaws, you don't fight large prey. If you're missing upper teeth, you don't need to grab and tear. If your mouth is made for suction, you're not built for violence. But this creature had the opposite of all that. It had a thick skull, a short, powerful head designed to absorb impact, massive teeth on the top and bottom jaw. Teeth that weren't shaped for display or intimidation or mating, but for pure damage. Some of those teeth were over a foot long. Not tusks, not decorative spikes. Consider this. Elephants have tusks, but they aren't designed to bite and shred flesh. Walruses have tusks, but they're not weapons meant to carve meat off a moving target. This was different. These were functional killing teeth, thick, heavy, cone-shaped, built to punch in, grip, and tear. The kind of teeth you only evolve if your food fights back, and your food is large enough to require brutality. And that's where the real nightmare begins. Because once you understand what this predator ate, you start realizing why the other apex predator didn't want a direct fight. People always ask who would win, like it's a movie, like the ocean was a boxing ring. But the truth is, the ocean doesn't care who's stronger. The ocean punishes injuries. Even a small mistake can be fatal. If a shark can't swim properly, it sinks. And in the ocean, sinking is death. If a whale-like predator gets damaged to the point it can't hunt, it doesn't recover. It starves. So a fight between two super predators doesn't create a winner. It creates two animals that are both dead or dying. That's why the most realistic scenario isn't an epic battle. It's avoidance, a prehistoric Cold War. Two monsters sharing the same ocean, both fully capable of destroying the other, and both aware instinctively that attacking is only worth it when there's something extremely valuable on the line: food, territory, or eliminating future competition. Because in a world like that, violence is expensive, but nature doesn't always play fair, and the most brutal part of this rivalry probably didn't happen between adults. It happened somewhere darker, somewhere weaker, somewhere easier. The real war was fought in the nurseries. The apex shark didn't raise its young in open water. It used shallow coastal nurseries, warmer areas where babies could grow without being surrounded by full-grown killers. And when I say babies, I don't mean something harmless. These babies were already several feet long, already built to hunt, already designed to become future apex predators. But compared to a full-grown super predator, they were nothing. They were food. And that's where the whale-like monster had one of the most unfair advantages imaginable. It was a mammal, which means it had sonar. And sonar doesn't just help you see in the dark. Sonar lets you detect life in water you can't even see through. It's like having a radar system in a world where everyone else is blind. Imagine patrolling a nursery zone and being able to detect hidden movement beneath the surface. Imagine knowing exactly where the future competition is growing and picking it off before it ever becomes a problem. It's the ultimate strategy. Eliminate your enemy before they grow teeth big enough to bite back. And as a bonus, you get a meal. But it didn't only go one way, because that whale-like predator had young too. It was a mammal. It had calves, and calves are vulnerable, even with protection, even with group behavior. Storms separate pods, visibility drops, a calf strays. And in that moment, the apex shark becomes the perfect executioner. Solitary, silent, built for ambush, waiting below the surface like a shadow until the exact second that calf is out of position. So as much as people want to imagine these creatures colliding like Godzilla and Kong, the reality was probably colder and worse. It wasn't about pride. It wasn't about dominance. It was about survival. A war of attrition where the goal wasn't to defeat the enemy today, but to erase them tomorrow by killing their future. And for a while, it worked. Both monsters remained on top. Both continued to exist. Both ruled without a clear winner. But then the planet changed, and the war didn't matter anymore. Around 3 million years ago, the Earth began to cool. Currents shifted. Food chains transformed. Some prey species died out. Others evolved. Many moved into colder open waters that these super predators weren't built to follow. And here's the cruel truth about becoming an apex monster. The bigger and more specialized you become, the more fragile your survival actually is. Your entire existence depends on the stability of a food source beneath you. The second that food source changes, even slightly, you crash harder than anything else. The apex shark, built like a living engine, needed constant calories to survive at that scale. If the prey became faster, migrated farther, or moved into colder regions, it couldn't simply adapt overnight. It was too big to chase like smaller sharks. It was too specialized to change its entire hunting strategy. It didn't lose because it got weaker. It lost because the world stopped feeding it. And the whale-like monster suffered the same fate. It depended on large prey species that vanished or transformed into giants that behaved completely differently. And without that exact niche to exploit, it didn't have a backup plan. When the buffet disappeared, the monster disappeared with it. So who won the war? Neither. Everyone else won. The survivors weren't the kings. The survivors were the ones who didn't try to become one. The more modern relatives that dove deep, hunted squid, and stayed out of the chaos. The prey species that suddenly had room to grow without being hunted down into smaller, safer sizes. The animals that weren't running their bodies like constant furnaces, burning calories at a rate that required a perfect world to survive. And that leads to the real lesson behind this story. Nature has a limit, an ecological ceiling. There's a reason we don't have predators the size of buildings today. It's not because evolution couldn't do it again, it's because the math doesn't work. To be an active, fast, aggressive hunter at that size, you need an ocean rich enough to support it every day, forever. And oceans don't stay rich forever. This is why that ancient era was so rare. Supporting even one super predator is difficult. Supporting two at the same time is almost impossible. The fact that it happened at all means the prehistoric ocean was not just abundant. It was extreme, a biological anomaly, And even though those monsters are gone, the blueprint of that rivalry still exists today. A solitary ambush predator and a warm-blooded intelligent mammal that hunts in groups. The modern version is smaller, but the pattern is the same. When the mammal arrives, the shark leaves. Because even today, nature remembers one rule above all else. If the cost of winning is too high, you don't fight. And now, after all of that, here's the reveal. The apex shark was the Megalodon, and the whale-like monster that stood beside it wasn't just a whale. It was Livyatan, a predator so unnatural, so violent, and so perfectly built for killing giants that even the king of sharks had to respect the distance between them. Because in that ocean, the top of the food chain wasn't a throne, it was a battlefield, and nothing about that monster was natural.